Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us and happy Friday. This is Ad Age Remotely, and I am Janine Poggi, Senior Editor here at Ad Age. Today, I'm joined live by Nathan Young, who's the Group Strategy Director at Periscope and co-founder of the nonprofit 600 and Rising. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Janine, thanks for having me. I was just jamming out to that waiting room music. It's pretty fantastic.
It's a lot of fun, right? The first time I heard it, I was like, this is awesome. And I sit backstage and I'm dancing away on it. Thanks for joining us. I know you've been especially busy these days.
Yeah, it's been wild. I wish I could say that, when we penned that open letter, I knew that this was coming. I might have prepared a little bit better.
But taking a vacation before that?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe set up some sort of yoga room in my apartment or something like that. Some way to unwind. But, it's been go since the very beginning. And as much as it's been challenging to balance, work and the important work that we're doing over at 600 and Rising, I wouldn't rather be doing anything else.
Yeah. For those of you joining us today, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social channels and we will try to get to them during this conversation. So Nathan, you said since you've, penned that letter to the agencies in the wake of George Floyd's death, where you outlined 12 action steps that agencies should take to work toward eliminating systemic racism within their organizations. What have you seen since then?
Oh, well, I got to tell you, it's been overwhelming, the response that we've seen to that open letter. First, just the amount of attention that was paid to that letter. It really seemed like the industry took it seriously from the get-go, which was not something that we were expecting. And then certainly when we followed up with the Commit to Change campaign, we started out with 30 plus agencies who have committed to change and released their diversity data. Now that number has exceeded 100 agencies in America who have responded, made their commitment, and released their diversity data, including 4 of the 5 major holding companies. And I can't express how thrilled I am that this industry seems to be taking this issue so seriously at long last.
Do any of the agencies so far, are there any that stand out to you in terms of their response?
Yeah, I mean, so in the indies, I really was moved by Stink Studios' response. They had a very kind of emotional commitment that they made, where it was clear that the leadership really dug deep and took inventory of what they had done and what they hadn't done, and how their action or inaction really contributed to the systemic racism that we're seeing in this industry. They really made no excuses. They took a very kind of aggressive approach to remedying some of the things that they feel like they had gotten wrong. And that was, for me, the most emotionally impactful thing that I have seen in response to Commit to Change. Outside of that, I've been pretty impressed with some of the holding companies. Havas, we didn't necessarily get off to the best start with them, thanks to Rosa Parks situation. But, after that, the fallout from that is that we got in contact with their leadership. We had a conversation about what their approach was with the response to the letter and how they could kind of change course and really show that they were committed to change. And to their credit, they absolutely stepped up to the plate. The plan that they released, I'm losing track of time, I think it was yesterday, was full of actionable steps that they were taking. They were time gated, so they said when they were going to take them by, and they were specific. They said, 50% of our interns going forward are going to be people of color. And there's a number of other kind of facets of that plan that were very, very specific, and they used the diversity data that they had to instruct what the best way forward was for that organization, and that's exactly the right approach.
Yeah, it seems like one of the keys to all of this is specificity in terms of timing and actual action steps versus blanket statements. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of, who's doing that and who might not be doing that right now from a holding company perspective?
Yeah, so specificity is incredibly important. And I would say that the other thing that is incredibly important is transparency. I've said on multiple occasions, and I believe this to my core, that you cannot change what you cannot measure. The same way that we approach, marketing challenges for our clients, we set specific measurable goals. We set up strategies in order to reach those goals, and then we hold ourselves accountable when we either reach those goals or fall short of them. That is what diversity, equity, and inclusion in this industry has been missing the entire time. And it's long past time that we started doing that. I will say that, most of the holding companies have gotten that message. Specifically, Omnicom has not. And I'm really disappointed to hear that.
Certainly, why not? Where are they lagging right now?
They haven't made any commitment to change. They haven't even acknowledged the conversation that's going on in the industry right now. They haven't even acknowledged 600 and Rising's existence. I've heard from different folks at Omnicom that they're taking the time to get this right. They're taking the time. We need to have a little bit more patience. Let them get their ducks in a row. But I'm here to say that Black America has been waiting for decades for this industry to get this right, and ultimately, we're done waiting. Every other agency holding company was able to get a plan together that had teeth, that was intentional, and they were able to release their data. The excuse that Omnicom has given is just, not sufficient for me. It's not sufficient for our members, and it doesn't hold water in the context of this conversation.
What do you make, Omnicom's DDB Worldwide, they named Justin Thomas Copeland to CEO of North America this week, and that would make him the first Black CEO of a holding company-owned creative network. What do you make about with that move?
Yeah, so I don't know Justin personally, but certainly this is a landmark moment in history for this industry. And there is Omnicom's inaction on these other issues doesn't take away from the impact of their action on this issue. Certainly, I give them kudos for that. But at the end of the day, we do still need to see that data. I love that they're, taking actions that show that they're taking this seriously. Certainly, Justin is an incredibly talented, incredibly experienced executive, and this seems like a very, very savvy appointment. I'm in support of it. But I'm not in support of lagging behind when it comes to reporting on data, and I'm not in support of PR talking points when it comes to the urgency of this issue.
Just want to say hi to a few viewers at home. Thanks for watching. We have Anthony, Roxy, James, Jasmine, Patricia, and Grace. Thank you for tuning in. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them on our social channels, and Nathan will try to answer them as we go along. So, how are you keeping up personally with all the requests that you're getting from the industry to help and assess and take a look at all of this data and put into perspective?
I'm glad you asked. I just hired an executive assistant. Shout out Raina. It's been tough. I'm not going to lie. I think that, again, the response to this movement has been overwhelming. We have over 3,800 members in our ranks right now. All of them have ideas and inputs about how we move forward, and we want to figure out a way to incorporate their feedback and incorporate their voices into what we're doing. We have a board of directors, which we just assembled about 2 weeks ago, as well as an advisory council. And then we have the hundreds of well-meaning agencies who are reaching out saying, we need help with this. We want to get this right. And I think for us, it's really a challenge between, moving as quickly and aggressively as possible as we can, but also setting up the right foundations so that our movement isn't just a flash in the pan, so that our movement turns into a fully fledged organization, and our organization turns into an institution that can serve this industry for decades to come.
You mentioned, 600 and Rising recently named a new board of directors. What are they up to?
They're up to a lot. Beyond the board of directors, which are all experts in their own ranks, we're assembling committees underneath each director. Each director has their own specific role. So there's somebody whose role it is to reach out to held agencies. There's somebody whose role it is to reach out to independent agencies. There's somebody whose role it is to develop policy. There's somebody whose role it is to deal with education issues. We're looking at this, from a 360-degree lens. We know that there are a lot of issues to cover. And for us, it's about getting the right people involved, getting the right consultants involved. We're working with some of the country's top labor economists, top HR professionals, top diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals, and really building a broad coalition that is going to be able to deliver on the promises that we outlined in that first initial letter.
So one of the action steps that you outlined was to make a commitment to improve Black representation at all levels of the agency. What do agencies need to change fundamentally to help achieve this?
I think it's a mindset shift. For too long, this industry has been talking about the issue of diversity in this industry as a pipeline issue, essentially saying there are not enough talented Black professionals out there who want to enter this industry. There are not enough talented Black students who would be interested in entering the advertising industry. And I simply say, that's bullshit. Blacks in America are some of the most creative folks out there. They drive every aspect of our culture, from sports to entertainment to music. They are some of the most tremendously creative people out there on the planet. So the idea that a career in advertising, where we are literally creating culture every day, where we are innovating every day, where we are putting out pieces of creative that touch millions of people in millions of households across this country, is laughable. The problem is that once we get Black talent in, they are welcomed by a environment that is quite frankly hostile to Black Americans. There is a monoculture that is pervasive in the advertising industry that is centered around white males. I know that women feel it in this industry. And I know that Black women in particular feel it. It is not welcoming when every senior executive is a white male, when every single person in a position of power is a white male. It is not welcoming when one of your white peers speaks up at a meeting and you have a good debate, but then when you speak up as a Black professional, they're like, "Oh, calm down, you're being aggressive." There are microaggressions. There are systemic issues that are at play here. And this industry has never really taken a look at the merits of those complaints, despite Black professionals complaining about this on the record since 1960s.
Any, personal experiences that you've had as a Black man in the ad world that, you can recall that sort of highlight this?
Certainly. I mean, you can tell, and maybe there's a little bit of merit to this because I am quite outspoken, but, I've never been one to hold my tongue or to go along with something just because the rest of the group is going along with it. And I've definitely faced issues around that, whether that's because of the color of the skin or the loudness of my voice, I'm not sure. But it's other things. It's when I have had the opportunity to be invited to the panel, being the only Black person on the panel. When I have had the opportunity to pitch a large client, literally being the only Black person on the call or the only person of color on the call. All those things are intimidating. All those things are discouraging. And I don't understand why there are millions of people in this industry who go today every work, look around, see a sea of sameness and say, yeah, this seems fine. Because that's not how people of color see it.
Right. I think one of the things that relates to this too include, you've talked about mentorship programs and training. How does that fit into all of this, especially now during a time where we're all working remotely? Like, is it becoming harder to find that inclusivity when we're all, working from remote locations from our homes?
Certainly. And one of the things that as an organization we are keeping an eye on is, we like to say that we try to be radically reasonable in what we're asking of agencies. In those 12 action items, we didn't, request that agencies invest millions of dollars in programs. We asked that they adopt common sense reforms that shouldn't take too long to spin up. We recognize that as an industry, we are going through a period of change. As an industry, we are under immense pressure in terms of profit margins, in terms of just revenue into our businesses. And that, quite frankly, this is an inconvenient time to be addressing some of these issues when we've got COVID and we've got, financial calamity happening around us. But just because it's an inconvenient time doesn't mean that it's not the right time to address these issues. And quite frankly, the advertising industry has had at least the past 15 years since the 2006 New York Human Rights Commission, where they outlined the exact same allegations that we're making today, to get their house in order, and they failed to do that.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those numbers. You and I had spoken about sort of the comparisons from 2006 till today, what agencies are doing internally in terms of diversity. And you made the point, I think, that they haven't changed since 2006. Can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. I see that you've got this little newsletter up here, and what you'll see in that document is that they did a study, and they found that only 2.5% of the people who made over $100,000, so that's how they considered advertising executives in their study, were African American, and that's despite African Americans making up a quarter of New York's population. Obviously, that's an enormous shortfall. But what's shocking is that since 2006, since that study was done, what we've seen as a result of Commit to Change and the numbers that were released is that not only have those numbers not gone up, they've actually gone down. I could be wrong. You can check me on this, but I don't think that there is anybody who has even reached that 2.5 kind of percent threshold in terms of their executives, and that's shocking. For 15 years, we've been having the Ad Color Awards. For 15 years, we've been patting ourselves on the back for what a good job we're doing in terms of bringing more people of color and more diverse voices into this industry. And it's just not true. The data doesn't bear that out. We have not done a good job on this, and it's time that we stopped passing the buck and got real about what we need to do to fix this issue. Again, this has been an issue. The New York Human Rights Commission, that was assembled in 2006. It was also assembled in the 1960s for the same issue, and they had the same numbers. So in over 50 years, this industry has not made progress, where every other industry that's adjacent to it has. And that's unacceptable.
Yeah, why do you think that is? What has sort of impeded movement forward, and why do you think we're not moving forward?
I think that we're so obsessed with awards. As an industry, we're so obsessed with awards. We're so obsessed with winning new business that we do those things no matter what the cost. We do those things no matter who we hurt. We do those things regardless of, let's just think about the crazy deadlines that this industry has. We know that that's not mentally healthy for our employees, but we put them through it anyways because there's money on the other end. There's an award on the other end. There's accolades on the other end. This industry doesn't care about its people in general, and in particular, it doesn't care about women and people of color. It only cares about the output, and that it's going to require a radical rethinking of what this industry stands for and how it operates if we're going to get through this.
Yeah, and you've said that one of the issues is the lack of data regarding Black advertising professionals. What do you think are the first steps the industry needs to take to start collecting that data and then, using that data to help move things forward?
Well, here's a dirty little secret. The industry doesn't need to start collecting that data. Any agency that has over 100 employees is required by law to collect that data under EEOC guidelines. So every excuse that they've laid out in years past about, we can't get this data, it's too onerous, or it's illegal for us to disclose that data, is complete nonsense. And you can see that in that the fact that over 100 agencies have released that data. 30 agencies were able to gather and release that data within that 1 week period when we gave them the open brief, and they had 1 week to participate. So all those arguments about it's impossible to do this or we can't do this are just false. They do it every year. They're mandated to do it by law. What I would say is that, there are different, maybe better ways that we can be gathering that data so that it'll be more instructive to how we can improve things. So 600 and Rising, as part of Commit to Change, we released a draft methodology. If you go to the open brief, I could provide a link to that after. There's a spreadsheet that any agency can use, and it will not just show the diversity of your makeup by, 4 relatively broad categories, but we can show it by category or by department. We can show it by seniority. We can show it by gender. We can show it by race and ethnicity. And I think that that's the first step. And our policy team, that's definitely our first priority, is taking what we learned from Commit to Change and the feedback that we've gotten from agencies and advancing that into a standard that can be adopted by the industry. And we're working with the 4As to make that a standard.
I'm Janine Poggi, and I'm here with Nathan Young from Periscope and the co-founder of 600 and Rising. What have you seen? I know a lot of agencies have really, from the get-go, have signed up to this, have have shown support for all of this. But have you seen any support from brands yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I can say with confidence that Google has been a really strong supporter of 600 and Rising. Nike has been a really strong supporter of 600 and Rising, and Visa have been really strong supporters of 600 and Rising. There are, we've got folks from Google. Shout out to Santi Pochat on our advisory council. He's been extremely helpful in getting us the access that we need in terms of technology, but also the access that we need to different decision makers at brands. And our conversation is rightfully focused on getting agencies to do what they need to do to get their house in order today. But make no mistake, we are also having conversations with brands across this country about how they can adjust their relationships with their agency partners in order to affect change quicker.
Yeah, what should brands be doing to help push along change?
There are a number of really great examples in General Mills, in Verizon, in Hewlett Packard. These are brands who have really centered diversity as a really important factor in their consideration set when they're evaluating agency partners. And the reason that they do that is very simple. Those are all brands who appeal to every American in this country. If you are a brand that is trying to reach every American in this country, makes all the sense in the world. And it is incredibly important that the creative team who is coming up with your ideas and putting your ideas and your communications out into the world reflects the fabric of America. Hewlett Packard did a study, and before and after they brought in more diverse agencies and then put in these diversity mandates. And they found that once they put those diversity mandates in place, they were a more profitable business. Their advertisements were more effective. And I think it is only due to hubris that agencies haven't done this bold experiment themselves, and that it requires brands to require them to make changes in their diversity before they take action. But I would like to see this industry, for all the bold talk that it has about how innovative they are and how creative they are, to start applying that innovation and creativity to the issue of diversity in their ranks.
We have a comment from Shannon on LinkedIn. One suggestion is to train everyone to be leaders, not cherry pick one person when an open position must be filled. Value all employees to be future C-suite leaders.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So what we have found as a result of conversations with our members is that as a result of the letter, the C-suite went down and talked to their people of color employees for many a times, like the first time in their career. They had never met a C-suite executive. They had never had a one-on-one talk with members of their leadership team. And they asked them point blank, what are we getting right? What are we getting wrong? How can we improve our diversity? How can we attract more diverse candidates to our agency? And they had long talks about it that were incredibly productive. I don't know why it took until now for the C-suite to start asking their employees, what they could be doing better. But, what we've seen as a result of the actions of 600 and Rising, of Allyship in Action, of Where Are All the Black Designers, all these movements that are happening right now, is we are experiencing a bottom-up revolution. For too long, we've been trying to solve the issue of diversity and inclusion from the C-suite. We've been putting in place I think, well-intentioned policies, but nobody ever asked the people of color, is this a policy? Is this a program that you want? It's just what they assumed that they wanted. And we know what happens as advertising professionals when you assume something about an audience. You get a campaign that is a complete dud. And that's what we've seen in this industry.
Let's talk about the Periscope walkout. It is rare that you ever see an agency walkout. Can you discuss what happened, a few weeks ago after parent company Quad prevented the organization from using the phrase Black Lives Matter? What was the walkout like, and what have the developments been since?
Yeah, Janine, I got to say that is one of the most painful but also powerful moments that I've had in my career. So it was obviously painful for me as a Black man who wrote a really heartfelt response on behalf of the agency to capture how our agency truly felt about the death of our fellow Minneapolitan, George Floyd. We wrote a really powerful statement, and it ended with a pretty innocuous close to me, which was that Black Lives Matter. Quad intervened, and they had me physically strike that from the statement. So you can imagine how painful that was to me as a Black man, because it is essentially my company telling me that my life doesn't matter. That being said, I believe in Periscope. I believe in teamwork. I believe in negotiation. And so I worked kind of behind the scenes with Eric Ashworth and Joel Quadracci to try and find a resolution to this issue. Because, sometimes you just need a little education, you need a little coaching. But once 4 weeks had passed and we still were not able to post that phrase. And not only were we not able to post that phrase, but we had a plan in place where we were going to be elevating Black voices using our social feeds. We were told that we could not retweet any organization that supported Black Lives Matter with the hashtag.
What was the reasoning? Was a reasoning given for why that was?
Yeah, there was a reasoning given, and that was that Black Lives Matter is too closely associated with defund the police, and Quad as an organization does not support defunding the police. Now, for me, I see those as two separate matters. I think that most people see those as two separate matters. I think most people can make the obvious conclusion that if you say Black Lives Matter, that doesn't just automatically mean defund the police or a number of different things. It's a pretty simple statement of fact. But that's what happens when you don't understand the people who work for you, when you don't understand their pain, when you don't understand their needs. You make backwards decisions, and that's what happened here. Unfortunately, it just came to a head when it was revealed that not only were they preventing that issue, but they had released misleading data for the commitment to change. Obviously, as the president of 600 and Rising, if any other agency did that, I would be loudly denouncing that action. So it put me in a hard place. Obviously, all the Black employees at Periscope were outraged. We all walked out along with an LGBTQ ally who was on the diversity council. Then 8 members of the content editing staff walked out. And then the very next day, the entire agency, once they had learned what had been happening behind the scenes, walked out in solidarity. And it was a really powerful moment. It was a really unifying moment for the agency. And, despite all the nastiness that kind of preceded it, all the backwards thinkings that preceded it, I think that we came back to the agency energized and more committed to doing the right thing than ever before.
And since then, what's happened? Has anything changed?
Yes, Quad did a complete 180. They apologized. They said that they got it wrong. Not only are we allowed to post Black Lives Matter, but we have complete editorial independence from Quad. We have brought on consultants who are doing diversity and unconscious bias training for the executives at Quad, but not just the executives at Quad, the entire corporation. I see that as a good resolution to this. I think the thing that maybe gets a little misconstrued, nobody is looking to exact like a pound of flesh here. We just want
one thing I've heard you say, I think, was about like 600 and Rising not being the diversity police. So I'm curious how the industry can be held accountable while at the same time not policing every action being taken.
Listen, I think that the same way that employees should have the ability to fail and get it right afterwards, so should corporations. Nobody's going to get things right 100% of the time. I think that, when I say we don't want to be the diversity police, when people release their numbers, when people release their plans, we don't want to be in the business of parsing every single aspect of their plan and saying, this is acceptable, this is unacceptable. That's not our role. We're here as a guiding force. We're here to work with, again, a broad coalition of leading experts in this country to put together common sense policy that we feel that all agencies can adopt. But ultimately, at the end of the day, each agency is very, very different. For every agency that has, no or very few Black people, there are some agencies that are super diverse. And they obviously don't need the same help or guidance that those other agencies do. So there has to be flexibility. We are trying to be flexible in our engagements with agencies and holding companies. I think the thing that we are not flexible on is when people make excuses instead of finding solutions. We are not here for excuses. We are not here for PR talking points. We are not here for delays. We are not here to hear about how there's not enough budget and there's not enough time to do this. You got to figure out a way to make this right. We will help you if you are earnest and you want to do it. We don't think that you need to figure it out on your own, but you got to put the effort in.
Yeah. And you can hear more from Nathan during Ad Age's Small Agency Conference, which runs from August 3rd to the 5th. He'll lead a workshop on August 3rd, exploring how independent shops can tackle diversity. Thank you so much, Nathan, for taking some time out to join us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Janine. This is great.
And as always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Alfred Mascaroni, Anna Sakula, Max Sternlicht, and Elise Liffring for making this live stream happen. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Peace.